The original guru in the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya is Srila Vyasadeva, who 5,000 years ago compiled all the Vedic scripture in Sanskrit. Vyasadeva is known as the literary incarnation of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even today, the seat of the Guru uses when he speaks is called the Vyasasana. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, has written a list of all the prominent gurus in disciplic succession down to himself. After his disappearance, his qualified disciples and grand disciples have taken the charge of initiating disciples. In this connection, I started initiating in 1978. I have accepted hundreds of men and women as disciples. Many of them have left me or given up the practice of Krishna consciousness. But I still have a core of faithful, loving disciples in the USA and foreign countries. Unfortunately, I cannot travel to be with them, but we keep in touch by my writings and other means. In 1985, I published a poem in Journal and Poems, Volume 1, describing the kind of guru I am.
Have to make an emergency announcement.
Okay.
Someone parked their cars in the lane of the fire department. They have to move them immediately. The fire trucks have to get out.
2 cars, you said?
2 cars.
2 cars.
Yeah, one is an Escalade, and the other one is a van, caravan. Just as you get out the door, the 2 forest vehicles.
Where are they?
In 1985, I published a poem in Journal and Poems, Volume 1, describing the kind of guru I am. It's titled, A Castor Tree Guru. A castor tree guru. When there are no trees, a castor tree is a big tree. I may be imperfect, Prabhupada would say, but if I speak what Krishna says, then that is also perfect. And the Prabhupada Nuga is in touch with the Shakti. The tree in the courtyard is also small, but sturdy even in winter. And in springtime it will bud green. Let me grow as I am able, even if I am small. And let me also shelter Shishya birds. I am his foot dust, his boy, his saved, his son, a typist, a bringer of a mango. But I cannot rest on these credits. Today also I am traveling to his Mayapur. I pray to stay a small tree, since that is what I am, and to deliver these shishyas given to me. By chanting and hearing and always living with the Vaishnavas, by preaching and urging myself and them, I'll help keep these ISKCON places sound until the end of my life. I am very pleased that you US-based devotees join me twice a year in Stuyvesant Falls For kirtans, dancing, lecture, arti, puspanjali, spoken homages of Vyasa Puja, and presentation and distribution of a new book and honoring a feast. I have nothing new to say. The Krishna conscious philosophy is fully presented in Prabhupada's books, and I urge you to regularly read them. Prabhupada has written that as a person needs an intake of grains and vegetables in order to stay healthy, so his devotees will fall ill if they don't honor the diet of reading his various books. As my disciples, you have the added responsibility of reading my writings. The easiest way to keep in touch is to read my weekly free write journal, which is posted every Friday on SDGlegacy.com. In addition to my free write journal, I publish 2 books a year. One, non-devotee Swami criticized Srila Prabhupada's followers, calling them bookworms because Srila Prabhupada provided so much reading. Prabhupada defended his prolific book distribution and called the so-called Swami something like a stool worm. With my encouraging to read Prabhupada's books, as well as my writings, I could be accused of trying to make you bookworms. But what can I say? The Brahma Gaudiya Sampradaya is known as the, quote, book Sampradaya. And as your spiritual master, my main vocation is writing. I do not expect you to read all of my writing, but if you take time to read some of it, I can die a happy man. Prabhupada personally told me in 1966 that if I read Gaudiya Vaishnava literature 24 hours a day, I would never come to the end of it. Hearing or reading Harikatha is the greatest nectar for an advanced devotee. A devotee in the footsteps of Maharaj Parikshit never gets satiated by imbibing the message of Godhead from a bona fide teacher. Srimad Bhagavatam states, Shrin Vatam Svagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridiyam Taksto Hi Bhadrani Virunotsi Saritatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Srimad Bhagavatam 1:2-17. I'll tell you of my own reading program. I read 20 minutes in Srimad Bhagavatam. Then I read 20 minutes in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Next, I listen 20 minutes to a Srila Prabhupada lecture. In addition, every day we have group out loud reading. We have 4 inmates and an occasional guest in our ashram. We take turns during and after breakfast and lunch. a total of 2.5 hours a day. We read up to the 10th canto, and then we read Krishna book. Next we read Nectar of Devotion. Now we are reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. You can read with your family members. Many of my disciples are approaching early old age. You can consider taking on some of the lifestyle of vanaprastha. Don't become so involved with your grandchildren. You may not be so inclined to do strenuous preaching, but don't waste your time in frivolous activities. You and your partner should be free for reading, hearing, and chanting. These devotional activities are not so strenuous, but they are precious and should be given priority. At your stage of life, while you are free and independent and have stable health, you should focus on the basics of sadhana before it's too late and you experience dwindling. I wrote a book in 1985 called Reading Reform. I quoted Prabhupada's letters and made my own comments. Here is an example, a letter to Babu Rupa, 1974. Quote, in my books, the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is explained fully. So if there is anything you do not understand, then you simply have to read again and again. By reading daily, the knowledge will be revealed to you, and by this process, your spiritual life will develop. You may please me the most by reading my books and following the instructions therein. In my commentary, a devotee in Mayapur once got up to leave in the middle of one of Prabhupada's lectures. Where is he going? Prabhupada asked. He has some work to do, a devotee answered. This drew fire from Prabhupada. What work? Nonsense. Unless you hear, what work will you do? It will just be karma unless you hear. We cannot just read the books and do nothing for the spiritual master, but neither can we serve without the knowledge gained by reading the books. As Prabhupada states in the letter quoted above, we must read the books and follow the instructions. This is the combination that pleases the spiritual master the most. Although Prabhupada's purports provide answers to every question, sometimes devotees cannot understand the spiritual technologies described in them. In this letter, Prabhupada indicates that simply by reading his books again and again, one will, in time, come to understand. Reading Prabhupada's books is not just an academic exercise or a way to accumulate knowledge. Rather, it allows us to break through our material condition and receive the highest spiritual realization. As Prabhupada states, our spiritual lives develop by reading his books every day. Here's another example, a letter to Bhargava in 1972. Quote, our advancement in Krishna consciousness is made possible in two ways, by knowledge and renunciation, jnana in Tyaga or Tapasya. The more we become renounced from this material world, the more we advance in Krishna consciousness. But we are only able to make sacrifices and perform tapasya if we have knowledge. So I am requesting all of my students to read my books very seriously every day without fail. In this way, if your mind becomes absorbed at least 1 or 2 hours daily in the transcendental subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and other books, then very easily you will make advancement in Krishna consciousness. This restlessness or agitation of the mind cannot be rectified by altering the material circumstances. If we are Krishna conscious, any type of occupation will suit me, and we shall always be satisfied. Therefore, I recommend you to read books more and more, and try to understand the subject matter from different angles of vision, and always be discussing it with your God brothers, even while you are working. And a final example, a letter to Bali Mardan and Pusta Krishna. Quote, street chanting must go on. It is our most important program. Lord Chaitanya's movement means the Sankirtan movement. You may simply take 2 hours for chanting 16 rounds daily, 2 hours for reading congregationally, and balance of time go out for Sankirtan. You must do both, reading books and distributing books. But distribution of books is the main propaganda. Reading in class for 2 hours is sufficient. Other reading can be done in spare time, if one has got it. It is not as though one has to be always reading. 1 hour for morning Bhagavatam class, and 1 hour in the evening, either Bhagavad Gita or Nectar of Devotion. That is sufficient. This letter came from an incident where Pusta Krishna Maharaj visited the Brooklyn Temple, and he advocated that devotees should read books and have classes 8 hours a day. So the managers became alarmed and phoned Prabhupada, and this is his answer in the letter. This year's Vyasa Puja lecture has been devoted to reading. I could have focused on other subjects, but this is a crucial one. I like to think of us as a big spiritual family reading together, just as the inmates of my small ashram do daily. You may not be able to read out loud for 2.5 hours, as we do in Viraha Bhavan, but you should try to schedule a substantial amount of time for reading Srila Prabhupada's books and my books. There is a saying, the family that prays together stays together. Similarly, the spiritual family that reads together stays together. We may be living in different geographical locations far apart, but by reading, we are packed up together. Thank you very much.